All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, I'll be discussing the trade that finally went through, the worst kept secret in the NFL, and that's the Eagles sending A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots. The Pats fresh off a Super Bowl appearance, Drake May being a finalist for the MVP trophy, and they're able to significantly boost the receiving core by bringing in Brown, who's been one of the most consistent guys in the NFL since entering the league back in 2019. You're looking at a 1,000-yard season every year since then, along with 61 touchdowns and 568 receptions. He's just been a stat sheet stuffer, and you got to ask yourself, why is a guy like this, who's in the prime of his career, getting traded, especially for a team like the Eagles, who've had immense success with him as one of their top targets. And, a lot of people, I'm sure, especially the ones watching this, have been, paying close attention to this situation over the years it's been unfolding, where, there's just been a lot of friction within the Eagles organization involving A.J. Brown. Whether it's arguments with Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni and him exchanging some heated moments, him having to meet with the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, because of things that have been said in the public, when it comes to, airing out grievances on a radio show or on a live stream. This is a team that was winning. They went on a 10-game win streak at one point, and he's still very upset. Back in 2024, the pass game at times was very sloppy, and he wasn't commanding as many targets as he would like. This is still a guy that had 118 targets in every single year with the Eagles, but in 2024, it was a significant drop-off. That 118 was far away from 150 plus that he had in the first 2 years with Philadelphia, and that just sparked a lot of animosity towards his teammates. And obviously that's a cancer you don't want to have in the building, and it seems like he deserves a lot of blame for this. This is not the way to act, I would say, especially towards your teammates that you've been with for a numerous amount of years on what's been a very successful ball club, especially since you're still producing. I know your 12.7 yards per reception figure was the lowest in your career in 2025, and the pass game efficiency overall struggled, and I think there's a lot of blame that needs to be distributed to Jalen Hurts. The fact that they've had a new offensive coordinator, I think like 4 or 5 years in a row now, is definitely a problem as well. There's been a lot of inconsistencies in that regard, and it can be frustrating for a winning football team to have a revolving door when it comes to your play caller and your schematics. And again, back to Jalen Hurts coming off probably the worst year of his career as well, where they just were struggling in drop back pass mode. He would drop back a lot, and he's scrambling out of the pocket, staring down receivers with bad decisions, or just not throwing things with clarity, not seeing the defense well, and it was out of sync throughout the entire season. A lot of people have seen Eagles football in 2025, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, regardless of the success. And A.J. Brown, this is a guy that's going to go to New England, a physically dominant pass catcher, incredibly reliable as well. When it comes to drops, it's not something he does a whole lot. Only 5 over the last 2 seasons. Early on in his career, he kind of struggled in that regard, but nonetheless, this is a guy that's always going to be available. I don't remember a time where he ever had to miss much time at all. He's been very healthy throughout his career, reliable guy. They had Stephon Diggs as a number 1, but he's got some off-the-field issues, and he's still an aging veteran. I thought he had a pretty respectable season for them, but they had an opportunity here to upgrade and finally lock in a true number 1. And I think this is a pretty good receiving core. They also brought in Romeo Doubs from the Packers. Matt Collins is a strong physical guy who can win downfield. They have a young trio in Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, and Kayshon Boutte, who all offered some very good production at times. Then Hunter Henry at tight end. So this is a deep receiving core who had a lot of mid-level guys, right? A lot of fillers, as I would say, guys that are going to go out there and get you 30 to 40 receptions for 300 to 400 yards throughout the year. And that's good, right? You'd want to have that type of depth, that pass catcher, but you still need that ace to cap things off at the top. And that's why this trade makes a lot of sense for the Patriots. They're going to cough up a first-round pick in doing so. Drake May, of course, again, coming off a phenomenal season, only his second year in the league, and he's both there dropping dimes, putting up numbers, leading this team through the playoffs, and this is only going to help his improvements continue to shine. I think he's going to be a very impressive quarterback as time goes on. Him and A.J. Brown are going to have a lot of years together. So for New England, this makes a lot of sense. Why not boost your offense when you clearly lacked playmaking in the Super Bowl? I know their offensive line got whooped. Seahawks, they did that to everybody, and this is a very young group for New England. So they're going to work out the kinks as time goes on, and giving them more guys that can win one-on-one matchups and come up with big-time plays is something they needed to address. So I think it's a pretty good trade for them. In terms of the Eagles, right, I think when you're able to move on from a guy that has caused a lot of headaches. That's something that can definitely help when it comes to boosting morale back in the building, because the Eagles have always been great when it comes to their culture. Jalen Hurts as a leader as well. People might call it corny, call it whatever you want, but he's still a hard worker. He's incredibly disciplined, and stuff like that. It's just not his forte, right? Coming from the University of Alabama, that's not the type of thing that they deal with. Is guys publicly calling out their teammates, having interactions on the sidelines that are quite negative. And I think this is a good opportunity for the Eagles to move forward and not let that be a distraction. And you look at what they did this offseason. They drafted Mekhi Lemon from USC in the first round. Love this player. I'm a USC fan, so I watched a lot of him over the last 2 years, and he is a perennial playmaker downfield. He has a very absurd catch radius. He's tough to bring down with his craftiness after the catch. He's a tough football player. His ability to track the ball, especially in the red zone, has been highly impressive. This is a guy that's going to be able to come up big plays on third and fourth downs as well. So I think Mekhi Lemon, he's going to come in. He can play in the slot. He can play out wide. He's going to bring a lot of versatility to the table, and he'll command a lot of targets. I think he might even be Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2026. Speaking of former Green Bay Packers, Dontavian Wicks, he moves on a 1-year, $12 million deal. His contract's a little interesting because I think there's an option for him to come back in 2027. That's the way I'm perceiving things. So a bit of a prove-it deal for him, and this is a player that could work into a longer-term option as well, as he's still relatively young. This is a guy that's only 25 years old, not the quickest of guys by any means, 6'1", 206. He can work out of the slot. He can play out wide as well. He was a reliable player. I talk about receivers that are fillers, right? Guys that are like your third or fourth option, but they're reliable. They're going to go out there and they're going to put up solid numbers throughout the year. And that's what he did over the last 3 seasons for Green Bay, 30-plus receptions in all of those years, 300-plus in all of them as well. He was a little banged up at times last year, and he also fell to the back of what was a deep receiving group for the Packers. So he went from 80 targets in 2024 to only 44 this past season. I think he's definitely in line for another 50-plus this year with the Eagles. So I think Dontavian Wicks, maybe a bit of an overpay, but sometimes you have to do that when you have a guy that has potential. And again, when you're on a prove-it deal, that's how things kind of work out. You look at another addition here in Hollywood Brown, a guy that everyone knows brings a lot of speed to the table. He's not the most reliable guy by any means, but he's a bit of a change of pace receiver, considering they don't have a whole lot of athletic ability when it comes to elite speed. I know Devontae Smith really checks that box. But A.J. Brown was a physical guy. Mekhi Lemon's not going to wow you with his speed, and neither is Wicks. So Hollywood Brown's a guy that's going to add some nice variety to this receiving core. They also brought in Elijah Moore as well. He hasn't really did much in his career, but an opportunity for him to crack this roster as well. And I think now with 2 first-rounders in next year's draft, it's an opportunity to keep adding to this receiving core. And, of course, they picked up Eli Stowers as well at tight end, another guy who is phenomenal at catching the football. He was the top tight end in college football, winning the John Mackey Award. So this is a team that's going to be just fine. They need their quarterback, though, to go back to the drawing board and figure out how he can get this offense back in sync, and they can be playing with high-level execution and efficiency, and that's going to be the main goal. So I think this is a win-win trade for both teams. The Eagles are not going to suffer by any means. They're going to do just fine. They'll find ways to, recoup that production that's missing. And then the Patriots, I think this is great for them because, again, they get that alpha that they badly need for their young quarterback and what's a very deep receiving group as well. Win-win trade here. Again, everyone saw this coming, but it's now official. That's me for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.